The American Revolution is a war that most people think they know, but really they don't. They think they know because it's in the history books. It's been romanticized by Hollywood. But there's so much more to this story than what you learned in school. It's me, and this is the untold story of the American Revolution. Part 1, The Hidden Spy Network. Few figures loom larger than George Washington, the general and the future president. But his wartime responsibilities kept him from getting his hands dirty. Washington was actually a spy. He ran an elaborate spy network that gathered intelligence on the British from all across the colonies. His spies were everywhere, tailing British officers, infiltrating their taverns, and even hiding in their attics. They sent back reports on troop movements, shipping patterns, and even personal details about the British leadership. This network, known as the Culper Ring, was one of the most successful in American history. It provided Washington with the information he needed to win key battles and ultimately the war. But it also helped shape the future of the United States. The Culper Ring spied on the British, but they also spied on each other. The group was rife with paranoia and suspicion, and members were regularly arrested and executed for treason. In the end, only one member was ever caught. Part 2, The Coded Message. When it comes to winning wars, intelligence is everything, and no one knew that better than Benjamin Franklin. But while he was famed for his scientific pursuits, his greatest contribution to the war effort was his mastery of misinformation. Franklin was a master propagandist. He understood the power of public perception and used it to his advantage. In 1776, he published a pamphlet that claimed the British had plans to hire German mercenaries to fight against the Americans. While it was pure fiction, it had the desired effect. Colonial leaders began to rally their troops and prepare for war. But Franklin didn't stop there. He continued to plant false stories about British troop movements and military plans, all designed to keep the Americans one step ahead of the enemy. These coded messages may not have won the war, but they did play a critical role in its outcome. Part 3, Ordinary People. War is hell, especially when you're not a soldier. Ask any veteran, and they'll tell you the toughest part of combat isn't the fighting, it's the waiting. The same was true during the American Revolution. Soldiers endured long periods of boredom punctuated by sudden bursts of violence. When the fighting was over, they had to find food, shelter, and medical care. For ordinary citizens, the war was even more difficult. Men, women, and children alike were caught in the middle. As the war dragged on, food became scarce and prices soared. Many families were forced to flee their homes, leaving behind everything they owned. And when the war finally ended, they returned to find their property destroyed or stolen. Part 4, Hollywood vs. Reality. For centuries, Hollywood has churned out movie after movie about the American Revolution, all designed to capture the hearts and minds of audiences everywhere. But how accurate are these films? Not very. Most of the famous scenes from the American Revolution simply didn't happen. Take, for example, the Boston Tea Party. In the movies, it's always shown as a peaceful protest, but in reality, it was a riot. The participants weren't just angry, they were violent. They smashed shop windows and destroyed property. Another popular myth is that the American flag was first raised at Fort McHenry. Not true. The flag was raised at Fort Stanwix. And it wasn't even called the Star-Spangled Banner then. It was called the Defense of Fort McHenry. But perhaps the biggest misconception about the American Revolution is that it was a war between two evenly matched opponents. In reality, the colonists were outgunned and outnumbered. They didn't win because they were better fighters or had more resources. They won because they had something the British didn't: freedom. The colonists were willing to fight and die for their freedom. And that made all the difference. Part 5, Global Impact. The American Revolution was a global event. Sure, it was fought on the soil of what is now the United States, but it involved combatants from all over the world. France, Spain, and the Netherlands all sent troops to help the Americans fight the British. But perhaps the most important contribution came from an unlikely source: women. Female spies infiltrated British parties. They stole top-secret documents and delivered them to the colonists. One woman even disguised herself as a man in order to join the Continental Army. But while these stories are fascinating, they only tell part of the story. Women's contributions to the war effort went far beyond espionage. Women of all ages and backgrounds served in the American Revolution as nurses, as soldiers, and even as commanders. They risked their lives to provide food, water, and medical care to the troops. And when the fighting was over, they picked up their weapons and fought for their country. The American Revolution was a time of great upheaval and change. It was a war that pitted brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. But in the end, it was a war worth fighting. It led to the creation of a new nation, a nation built on the principles of freedom, democracy, and liberty. Those are the ideals that the revolutionaries fought for, and the ideals that have made America the greatest nation on earth. Or have they? You decide.